Good afternoon. I'm Darryl Dwayne. I am the coordinator of community engagement here at the Newark Museum of Art, and I am joined by two amazing individuals. They are here to be a part of our conversation titled Newark, the Progressive City. And in this conversation, we're going to have an insightful discussion about the impacts that the 1967 Newark uprising has had on today's city and the continued fight for social justice. So we're going to be talking a little bit to them about their personal experiences, as well as political views and context to this, along with the arts and how can the arts play a role in the healing of our community and the healing of individuals who live throughout the community. So with that being said, to no further ado, I introduce to you Linda C. Harrison, the director and CEO of the Newark Museum of Art, and Mayor Ras Baraka. Thank you both for joining us. The conversation was so good. I really didn't want to interrupt you all. I was like, but I do want to make sure that since the conversation revolves so much around community, that we also engage the community as a part of this conversation. Yes. But thank you both. Just before I jump into the questions, phenomenal. I really have to say there's something to be said seeing community leaders who are not only stepping up and doing new initiatives that are maybe not considered the norm, but fighting to make sure that those initiatives take root, and that to see people who look like me behind those initiatives, to be honest, that in itself is empowering. And I can say for the next generation, helps us have even a bigger charge to follow behind. So I just wanted to say that before jumping into the questions. So we do have a question from one of our viewers, Roger C. Tucker. How will the museum continue to reinforce its current progressive strategies during COVID-19? It's been repositioning the Newark Museum of Art has been repositioning as a cultural and educational community resource center versus the old perception of the museum as non-inclusive institution for people of color. So Roger's question essentially is, how will we continue to be progressive and including people of color as we move forward?
Well, I thank you for that question. We started a couple of years ago, actually by shifting our mission. We have had a very good foundation with our museum, but we know that for us to be a relevant museum in the 21st century, that people are first. And that comes before our objects, believe it or not. And this is a shift from traditional museums where it's all about the objects, the people, well, okay, we hope they're okay. Are they okay? But no, we really are focused on not just diversity, but we're focused on inclusivity. And that means that we go deep into our organization to get ideas, not necessarily just from the leadership team, where community voices are what we're listening to. That's what's helping drive our programming for the last 6-7 months, and we will continue to do this.
And something that you and Raz both touched on earlier in regards to access, I think that's even more imperative in line with the response to the question, making sure that all communities have access to the museum and to the museum's programming. I don't know if Mayor Ras Baraka wanted to add any more words to that question or a response to that question.
I think that she dealt with it very right on the point. That's it. I mean, what you said is right. The museum is made up of people, and that's what we need to understand. And it's living. It's not stoic and old and static, right? It is living, and so it's important to get people in there.
Moving to our next question, which comes from Tara. So Tara wants to know, this question is for both of you. How do you feel about some of our amazing monuments in Newark? For instance, Lincoln in front of the courthouse. Are they considered art? Do they belong in the Newark Museum in order to protect them? And that was her question. She just wanted to say thank you for both of you all doing this today.
That's an excellent question. You want to jump on that?
I'll jump on that one first. Monuments are art, and monuments have been historically funded by one group of people, and that's been the majority, white men. And so we see these monuments that are white men. Perhaps it is time for the monuments, not that we are ignoring them, some to be replaced, some to be put in storage and perhaps brought back out in context of the entire story. And there needs to be new monuments. There could easily be a monument or two in every park in Newark about the women, the women of color, and that really helped this town, this city, this region. In addition, perhaps a monument around the 1967 rebellion. What would that look like? That is a piece of art that could be commissioned. So it's not just a crisp black and white answer, but I think that there is opportunity for us to shift what monuments look like, not only in the city of Newark, but around the country.
Yeah, a monument is exactly what it says, something that's is for praise, right? So it's art. It is an expression of the praise of something that you think is the best of what you represent, right? And that's why people take offense to some monuments, because when people put up a monument to something, they're saying this is the best of what we represent. And if this is the best of what you represent means my denigration, then I have a problem with that, and it's uneasy for me to be in these spaces. And so the history of the world is changing, and the monuments to those things change. If you go, I mean, there are monuments all over the world, Sphinx and pyramids and all kinds of things all over the world. What was American monuments look like in the course of American history? What should we be looking at? And some of those things do belong in the museum, some of it, because I don't think that we want to erase history. I think it's important that we don't erase history. I think it's important that we understand the fullness of history, because that explains to us why we are where we are in the present and what we have to do as we move forward. So we don't want to erase history. You want to identify it, but you want to identify it in a kind of whole and rightful way. And that's why I took care in removing the Christopher Columbus statue, because there are different perspectives on what that means to people, right? And we were taught in the same educational system. The problem with the educational system, it is just routed in white supremacy. So it has taught some people that being white made them superior and being black made them inferior. And in that, we've taught to idolize all of these people. And so pulling it down is an affront to people, because they've been miseducated just like you have been, right? And so they have to be re-educated. And you take care as a teacher, as an educator, you take care in educating people, right? Saying, listen, this is not good. It needs to be removed. We don't mean no disrespect to the Italian community or the history of Italians, but this is disrespectful. We have to remove this, and we can have dialogue about it as well. We can give it to you back, and we can put something up here that's more appropriate and relevant for where we are in this moment in history, right? And I think that's a discussion that we have to have, not just with ourselves arguing with people who agree with us, but be brave enough to have a discussion with people who outright oppose to what you're saying.
And I think that's important context. Like, I think ultimately we have to keep in mind the context of what we're looking at these items through, right? The lens that we're looking at these items through, and context, and with context brings clarity. So totally agree with both of you. This next question comes from Mark Little. This question is for Mayor Ras Baraka. How can you avoid gentrification of our neighborhoods? And I know you spoke on that earlier about welcoming dialogue about that. So here we have a question in direct response.
Absolutely. So gentrification is not like a button you push in City Hall. And I think people have think that there's a button you push and say, boom, gentrification, this is what we want and what we don't want. Which is why we have a committee Equitable Growth Commission that we created to kind of push back against the systemic ways gentrification happens. Gentrification is almost the negative side of the development of things that you're doing right. So the minute you begin to do things to improve your city, people begin to invest. And because the market around the city gets high, people from other places come here because they're actually seeking lower rents themselves. The fact is that the rent in their neighborhood is too high, so they come to your neighborhood, but your rent was lower than theirs, but they can afford to pay a little bit more than you. And so the market actually moves in that direction. And then you get apartments and housing that begins to cater to that market, as well as commercial development. It really destroys the kind of fabric of the community. So we don't want to be this kind of cookie cutter Manhattan kind of place. We want to keep our community, the small mom and pop stores, the fabric, the diversity, the edginess about Newark. We have to figure out how to keep that and manage development at the same time. So you circle areas of the community and say, we're going to keep the prices in this community at a certain level so that it won't chase people out of the community when there's development happening. And we do that by land banking and then creating a land trust. We just was able to establish a land bank, and then COVID hit. We're still moving forward on that and doing a land trust at the same time. So these are all market forces. It's all a part of, in capitalism, these are all the market forces that force working and poor people out. I'm going to tell you this, I don't care how many things we put in place, there has been no foolproof effort to completely stop gentrification anywhere in this country short of completely changing the system we live in, right? What we're doing is mitigating it. We're putting stop gaps in place so that everybody isn't crushed completely by it, that we still have some community left and people that can live here and be a part of these neighborhoods at the same time. So we're working hard on that. I wish I could tell you that there was a magic pill that I had to make sure that the community is not gentrified. What I can tell you is we're going to fight like hell to make sure that people can afford to live in the neighborhoods they live in now.
Thank you for that. And that reinforces the idea behind voting, right? Making sure you vote political leaders in office that support your vision for your community. And I think that's exactly what needs to take place for Newark to continue to thrive in the direction that you just spoke to, Mayor Ras Baraka. With that being said, I want to ask one more question before passing it over to Linda. This last question is in regards to the museum, and this comes from John. So John wants to know, the Newark Museum of Art has a unique collection of pieces that speak to the issue of Black empowerment and equity. The collection is relevant as we look back at Newark's rebellion and forward to the justice issues raised by protests around the country today. Can the museum potentially share some of these pieces in an online exhibit as a possibility as a move towards future programming? So I'm going to pass that over to Linda.
That's a great question, and yes, we can, and yes, we will. This is what we have been looking at pre-COVID. We were looking at how to take our distinct collections across the board and be able to tell the very different stories, the untold stories, the Black stories, the Portuguese stories, the Afro-Mexican stories, even the African, Afro-Asian, and other areas and parts of the Asian diaspora. We have it here. And this is why I say we accelerated our digital strategy development, because we know we have the content to be able to speak to these various communities, and we will be bringing it forth, whether it's in digital or in person.
Thank you for that. And I just want to remind everyone as we come to a close that if you're interested in more virtual programs, that all of that is accessible on our website. So
first, I'm encouraged by this program, encouraged by obviously your leadership there at the museum. We're trekking forward. We're pushing forward, and the world is not easy. It is not simple. It is complex. It is diverse. And so it takes thoughtful and committed and collective folks to get us through this. It doesn't mean we'll always agree. It doesn't mean we'll always see eye to eye, but we always have to see the finish line together, right? And we have to find a way to get us across that finish line together. And so we want to be able to see the world in the way we paint it, right? In the way we write it, in the way we speak it, right? We want to see the world the same way we saw it as 15, 16-year-olds in our grandmother's kitchen, cornbread and black beans and rice, right? So we want to imagine that world and create that world, but you need the people to do it, right? Together, collectively. We can't just talk about it and argue about it. We got to actually roll up our sleeves and build it. That's why I like being the mayor, and that's why I like the people of my community, because we have a lot of builders in this city, and we're going to build the world we want to see.
Thank you, Mayor. There is nothing else to say that we will continue to be activists and not just talk. And this is what the new museum is about.
God bless you.
Thank you, Darryl.